Hello and welcome to Media Academy Line, episode 63. I'm Brandon and you're Dana.
Hello, welcome to another week. We're getting the habit of this. We've got 3 in a row. How are we doing? Look at us.
Trifecta.
Yeah, that's right. So, welcome back, everyone. I hope you've had a good break. So, I hope you're surviving the heat at the moment. Here in Australia, it is summer, so we're having, 30 plus degree days. We've had like a whole week of it so far. So,
It's been good. I love it.
To be honest, this is the time of year I live for. I love it. Give me more of this kind of weather.
Yeah, let's go to Queensland.
Yeah, we'll just move to Queensland. And
Screw you,
just
Melbourne.
Yeah, you can keep your fucking winter. So in this podcast, we're going to talk about a bunch of films that we've seen. We've got a bit to catch up on since we haven't done these for a while. So we've sort of gone through a list of films we've both seen, and we're going to give our 2 thoughts on them. So which one do you want to start with, Brandon?
Let's start off with Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat. So this is fresh in my...
Mortal Kombat. Sorry.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
That was spot on.
Get over here and all that.
That's right. Victory. All right, and let's begin. Speaking of victory, I couldn't believe they actually put that in the film a couple of times.
Oh yeah, I know. When it came up, I was like, yep, typical. And to be honest, everything that was done in this movie to me, I just was like, I prefer the original, the movie. The
original
first one that came out
from the 90s or whatever it was.
So nostalgic, There's just so much in that movie. It's so bad, but so good.
Terrible visual effects and all.
Yeah. Just terrible across the board.
Yeah,
but,
and this one to me, it's like, yes, you've got all the bells and whistles and all the visual effects and all the special stuff, but there's only so much glitter you can sprinkle on a turd.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. Like, I just check out so easily in these kind of movies. I guess I'm just not in the demographic for this kind of stuff anymore. If I was probably a young teenager or early 20s, maybe if I was just like that age where you just like love violence and like action and that's about it, and I just found it all boring, like the fight scenes, the choreography, the acting, the look of it, all of it. I just checked out within about, like, even it wasn't even entertaining enough for me to laugh at it, which is frustrating because I put it on with my brother and we're like, we're going to sit down and we're going to laugh at this. And I'm watching it and at moments I'm thinking, oh yeah, this could work, this could really work. And then other moments I'm like, this is just not clicking with me.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, Mortal Kombat's such a cheesy, like story, like the game, like to make a movie out of something like that is pretty, you're asking a lot. And I find there's no way of sort of making something like this interesting without it just being balls to the wall, silly and just over the top, exaggerated. Like the gore, like it should have just been full on, brutal. And it just didn't feel like it.
I felt like they held back.
So did I.
Except for every now and then they had like one of those moments. But I felt like you play those games, they're fucking brutal.
That's what the game is. That's all right. The game is.
And this is just like, this is tame. They just had a couple of bits, right at the end, we'll chop off an arm or whatever.
Yeah.
But it definitely, the game was just non-stop. And the fighting in those games is just non-stop,
Yeah.
Extreme shit going on. And I found like there was the fighting scenes in this were either really short or nothing. They were just throwing arms around for a while until something happened.
Yeah, it just felt like every other kind of fight scene I've seen in a mediocre kind of action film. Yeah. And I guess that's the thing, because there's been like John Wick, there's been... here we go. I'm going to run into a moment I've not been able to think about action. But movies like that have kind of pushed the envelope in regards to on-screen action, where they've made it interesting, where it's like where they've kind of sort of composed it or choreographed, it's not even a word, but made it in such a way where it's like feels like one take, where it just keeps going and going. Like that action scene in Kingsman, for example,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or something like that, where you're just seeing this full-on action, and it's just obviously they put so much effort into those action scenes and the
Yeah.
choreography,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
and I feel like this just doesn't. I feel like they just rushed it. You know, it was
Mm.
just a big kind of rush kind of thing,
Yeah.
and even it's kind of like you're saying, like it's like it's got its balls chopped off to an extent too, because like it's like if they made a Grand Theft Auto movie but made it M15 plus.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think one of the worst things that was just keeping me out of it completely, just the acting in it was just too over the top. I guess yeah, I get the game is over the top in their acting and all that sort of stuff, but that's the point of the game. It doesn't really work when you're trying to make a film that's so serious, and it's trying to be Hollywood, but at the same time, it's got this over the top, like, oh, we're going to have this over the top everything, and we're all going to talk over the top. And I just could not believe anything that I was seeing on screen, because if I was standing in the room when they were, I felt like I'd be trying to laugh half the time. Just because I felt like they were just too over the top, to the stage where it was almost campy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because it's almost like it's boring, because because in the original film that came out that Paul Thomas Anderson directed, that one, it's so campy. You got like Christopher Lambert, and all the actors in that are just, the way they deliver their lines is just so, the way they act in it is so campy, but it's like pushed to 10 or 11 campness, which makes it entertaining.
Yeah. Everything follows that same, it's either you pick a direction and you stick with it, right? So everything in that original film follows that vein, It's like, we're just going to have fun with this. But in this film, they're like, we're going to try and make a serious, epic Hollywood film until we start talking. And then that's when it starts falling apart, Everything, the visuals, the story, the whole thing is meant to be really deep and epic and serious. But it's like, did the actors not get the memo, or was the direction wasn't there, or if we're sticking on the idea of characters and that, there was only one character that I actually liked in this.
Okay.
And that was the Australian.
Right, I don't even know. Oh, was that playing Kano?
Kano, right?
Yeah, okay.
And the only reason was because I could understand half what he was saying, while the other characters were like, what's he talking about?
Every time we sort of...
And so for me, that was almost like an inside joke. But other than that, that's the only reason why I was finding it so funny. Like, it was like, I can't remember the exact line, but it was like, we're 35 k's away. And everyone's like, what? And it's like, well, that's our terminology for kilometres, so I know exactly what it's saying about. But that's the only reason. It's got nothing to do with the film. It's just that I felt like I was in an inside joke half the time.
Yeah, true.
So, and there would have been quite a bit of, ad-libbing and making that up as you go, because, you get an Australian actor in it. And,
my main issues with it is that I don't like who they focus on, which characters they focus on. So Scorpion and Sub-Zero thing, like, they're not the characters you should be following.
Yeah.
I don't think for me they'd be better off just being threats or on the side, or the characters that you look forward to seeing when they finally come on screen. It should be more focused on the more humanoid kind of characters, or not humanoid, but like more like the original with Liu Kang and stuff. That is, I guess it's going to repeat what that film did, but I felt like that was a much better, like Johnny Cage and Jax and Sonya Blade, like focusing on those characters, and that sort of gets you into that world. Whereas when you're focusing on this weird sort of story about this battle between Sub-Zero and Scorpion and stuff like that, I just found it just didn't quite work for me.
I was surprised that Johnny Cage wasn't in it. I was expecting, like, they had that little bit at the end there. It was like, he's going to be in it.
It was weird.
In the sequel, that probably won't happen. Where they had that little moment. But I thought, why would that's normally the character that you see first on screen. But so it's strange that he wasn't in it. But
I think it's possible I might get a sequel. It didn't do amazingly, but it didn't. What's the numbers for it? So it's 55 million estimate budget, and it grossed 83 million. So
yeah, the issue with that is as soon as you put on
advertising and all
advertising costs, you're gonna
it's
lose
like 100 million probably.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
usually double it. So yeah, it probably didn't really. And I don't know what numbers they get for streaming and stuff. So it's probably broke even or close to.
Yeah.
In ways, but probably not enough for them to greenlight it straight away.
Yeah,
remember?
It is the wrong time to be releasing films. I can get that.
This should have just been straight to streaming anyway.
It should have been throwing it out there. Just put it out there, give it to people. Yeah, so people can see it. So.
But yeah, overall, the director's Australian as well. He's from Perth.
There's so many Australian actors in it.
Yeah, so that, I felt like just the acting choices, none of them really worked for me.
Yeah. They had the gym instructor, whoever he was that comedian guy. Which I couldn't, again, from that point, I couldn't take him seriously as an actor because I keep expecting him to say a joke. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, I guess it's probably just, and it could just come down to that, the choices of, the direction of the characters, picking the right characters.
Yeah, I feel like that all missed the steps for me. Like there wasn't anything for me to latch onto. So the action was not what I wanted. Wasn't engaging for me. The kind of look of the film wasn't really visually striking to me for something this crazy. This kind of concept of a game. It should have been really out there.
Yeah.
And the actors, I just found them so bland, and they weren't interesting enough for me to kind of get interested or go, oh, hang on, that's Kano, or that's Louis Kang, or that's Jax, or so and so on. None of them felt right, so I was already struggling with it.
It's very true, very true. I agree. Unfortunately, that was the case because you got all the. I can't pick too much on the visuals other than like half the time it felt like you were on a set. Yeah,
and then you got Goro coming into it with his forearms and wasn't impactful.
But I mean, it's a typical, sort of one of those action films. It's kind of what you expect. Like it is what you would expect for a film these days. So, but other than that, bringing back to it, I think it just falls apart. How the tones were all different, and they didn't really. It's not like you get a film like Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest, or any of them, Tim Burton even. Pick one of these directors, and they're great at picking a tone, picking a direction, and sticking with it, and you can feel that direction, you can feel that artistry, that craft in their films. And this one, it feels like a hodgepodge, like they didn't know what they were doing.
First time kind of director. It doesn't have a signature sort of style,
That's right.
It's kind of
Has he done other stuff?
No.
He hasn't. He's straight in.
Yeah. I looked him up just before. He's done nothing that I can mention. He's done one other thing that's a 1 minute short.
So so that could almost come down to the studio's fault, or the
100%.
the
this guy would do it for
fault.
$50.
Yeah, it was like, let's just get someone cheap. He's an upcoming. We'll build him his career for him, but you need to do
what we tell him to.
Yeah, that's right. And if it fails, we'll blame it on him.
And he's got nothing else lined up. So
it's like every even Spielberg started off with the littlest television projects.
Yeah.
You need to get your feet dirty somewhere, and throwing people in the deep end like that, you almost feel sorry for him.
I just don't understand that kind of. Like, if I was a studio with a property like that, I'd definitely think, all right, we can't get the most expensive directors, and they won't probably want to do this anyway.
Yeah.
So let's just find someone that's done some really cool music videos, or someone that's done that's got a style to it. Someone that knows how to handle special effects and fight scenes and I don't know, inject some bloody life into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even look, I'll even go as far as finding some Japanese director that no one's ever heard of, or someone who can actually understand that style, that culture.
Even the guy that like Ong Bak, I don't know, these like fighting movies that came out years ago, and the fighting in it's just crazy, and like that's kind of like bled into things like John Wick and so on. Like,
even Shang-Chi, the new
Marvel
film.
Yeah, there you go.
That film's got so much more going for it than this one. They went to the effort of actually hiring whole teams of people to choreograph each one of these fighting scenes, and giving them their space so that they can make that their own. And I'm sure there would have been a degree of that for this.
And I find like even a movie like bloody Kung Fu Panda has better fight scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how funny.
When you grow up with movies like Jackie Chan and a bit of Bruce Lee and
but even to be honest, we could be overthinking this. Like, if you want to get reference for fight scenes, just look at the game. It is one big giant reference of the fight scene to expect.
100%, exactly.
So if we're creating a film about the game, let's look at the game.
And utilise that as much as possible.
Even contacting the creators of the game and speak to them and get them involved.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to be able to have a bit more, connection to the properties, to the creators, and getting their input.
That's right. Get them involved, and somehow we can have some sort of.
That's what really pisses me off. Like, here we go. I'm going to get angry now. Yeah. But it's really pissed me off. And that comes down to, like, even the Doom movie. I mean, they've done 2 now. Resident Evils. Bloody, you name it. Every video game property movie I've pretty much seen that's like this has always been so shit because of those facts alone. And you name it, all of them always feel like they're so disconnected or far removed from their original source material, and they haven't done their bloody homework, or they're just going, nah, we're making a film. We're making a movie, it's an interpretation, it's blah, 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 blah. And it never feels like they've actually sat there and looked at what makes that game work and what they should focus on translating into the language of film. It's pretty simple, like...
The thing is, you're right. They're sitting on this high horse thinking this is film. But if you haven't played any film in the last 10 years, these games are becoming more like films. Every release, right?
Yeah.
There's big giant story arcs that happen every single one.
In saying that,
yeah,
it's a good segue into something I want to talk about.
Sure.
Last of Us 2.
The Last of Us 2. Here we go.
You go.
I was going to say. So The Last of Us is one of the few games recent. Well, I say recent. Feel old now. It's one of the ones I would have played it maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, the first one, you mean?
Yeah, the first one, right?
Yeah.
And that would have been one of the first games on the modern consoles that I've actually completed from beginning to end. Bringing back that story point, just to finish off what we're saying, it is half the reason why I played that to death, right? Is because it was blending the line, merging the two, so that it wasn't quite a movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't say it wasn't a movie at the same time. So it was an interesting blend there, and it was seamless between the gameplay and those story points.
Exactly, the story beats,
that's right.
The way they kind of the pacing of it, and the way they kind of, what's the word? the momentum of the game. You know, it's kind of like it's how they fused that is what made it a winning formula, because he got such brilliantly acted characters that are got awesome character beats as well, and interesting and risky and I find that's what made that game so special, is because you're dropped into this world, you know, that turns to shit, and then you're following this descent of society and civilization along with the lead character, and then how he sort of has to tackle that, and then throughout the game you're sort of watching his descent into absolute survival mode. And then you get the little girl Ellie, you know, so there's Joel, and then you get Ellie that comes into it as well, and then it's that awesome dynamic between the older character and then protecting, you know, which is in a weird way a bit of a MacGuffin, the Ellie character, which then is just a great dynamic between those two characters, and every other side character that's sort of brought into it along that journey is also very interesting, and I love the way they just composed it and expanded on it in that universe, but still kept it very minimal and focused on the lead characters, and then it just spiraled even further towards the end. You know, the third act was just amazing, the way they pulled that off, and then obviously it left on such a high note, that first game where everyone was kind of like just so amped to see where they were going to take this story in those characters.
This film came out right when we were transitioning from games just being, we'll just get a quick voiceover, someone in a booth, get them to do a quick voiceover, and then we're done, to this point where we're going to rig you up with all of these sensors, and we're going to put a facial tracking camera on you. All the mocap stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're going to record your actual face and your movements of your face and facial expressions, and we're going to project that into the game. So we went from this, you know, this quite crude sort of, this is a game. Characterization.
Yeah.
That's right. We did have characters. Stiff. And we had. That's right. They just do quick basic animations that some animator would do. And then technology got to a point where it's like, we're going to stick your face in that game, and every movement that you do and every facial expression that you do, we're going to project that onto the character. So people can actually feel that. That first 10 minutes of that game, if you're not bawling by the end of that game, if you don't feel something, scene, that's right. Man, and that's my point, right? And this is a game. You don't expect the deep like that to happen, that story arc, that story narrative to start off like that in a game. You expect, right, you're in level 1, let's do this.
It's quite interesting because, like, prior to this kind of game, you had the way they kind of pull it off, because you had games like Mass Effect and all that are very story driven and characters and stuff like that in the game, but I always felt like prior to that they'd always have to utilize the cutscenes to, you know, which wouldn't be the game graphics, so they'd have to do like a separate kind of style to the game graphics, because they couldn't put the detail in. But this was kind of the point, which you're right, this is the point where they could actually go full game graphics, and they still and it works. You know, you don't have to rely on cutscenes.
That's right. There's a seamless blend between the narrative of the story and the gameplay. Yeah, that's right.
But it's interesting because my brother actually had this on PlayStation 1, the first one when it first came out, and I was not into gaming at this stage. I kind of just dropped out. This is one of my periods where I wasn't really playing much video games, and he was just all about it, and he was like we were living in the same place at the time, so I'd like drop into his room every now and then. He's playing it, and I'd just see little bits of it, and I'll stick around and watch little moments of him and be like, yeah, this looks really cool. But like he was just going on and on and on about it, and I was just like, oh, okay, all right. And I never really got the gravity of it till, funnily enough, and everyone was talking about it. My friends, a few of them were everyone was obsessed about it, and I just could never figure out why are they banging on about this game so much? Like, I can see it looks great, but it's not until you actually sit down and play it and go through the story beats and actually, and you're there with the characters and you're actually playing as those characters, obviously you're not going to connect with it. So it took me a few years till the remastered version came out, and I finally sat down with it and played it, and I was like, and once I completed it, or throughout playing it, I was like, okay, yeah, right, I get it now, yeah.
And just before we talk about the second one, I guess my last point, just to sort of close off everything we were talking about prior,
sure,
in this discussion, the difference between this sort of story, being within a game, this idea of having a story, this is one of the very few moments that I actually felt like I was a part of the story, that I wasn't just an onlooker, I wasn't just watching as it happened. I felt like it was happening, and it was happening to me as I was going along in that story. And I think that's the power of blending the two like this.
Yeah. I was actually really enjoying the bleakness of that world that they that they made. And it's funny because you're playing a game like this and then you get the pandemic that comes.
Yeah.
And it just kind of it just sort of all. And then the number 2 finally comes out. I got it first day release. And obviously there's a big hoo-ha about it. We all things got trickled online, and there was this and that, and there was a lot of negative stuff coming out about it, and I kind of just blocked my ears with a lot of it and just thought, no, whatever. There's always negative stuff coming out about things that are so important to the gaming world or film world, and especially when you got diehard fans, screaming about this or that. And anyway, so this game came out, and number 2 came out, and the pandemic hit, and I had my son as well, so it was a very, very trying time, and obviously I had a lot of problems with my partner at the time and whatnot, so there was a lot of shit going on for me, and I just put this game off. I played a few hours of it, and I had to do it in sections, so I probably, in between those sections, it had been months and months and months and months. So I'd played probably the first 3-4 hours, and then I waited months, and then picked it up again, and so on and so on. So it took me because remember I was doing the first reactions. We did videos of this on the channel ages ago. My first impressions and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish it. I'll be, and then it only just took me to probably I don't know, November time, maybe early December, till I actually bloody finished it. So it was a year I don't even know the time frame, but it was a long time till I actually finished it, and because I'd been going through so much stuff last year, and I just could not sit down and play a game or watch many films or do what I normally do. It just wasn't happening. So when I finally got around to doing it, I'd always enjoy the bits that I did play, but it's been so disjointed for me. It makes me want to go back and play it in one kind of big hit.
Sure.
But in saying that, I did enjoy it. I found it not as... Here we go. I found it not as impactful as the first one, because that's usually the way it goes. But and obviously there's a lot of feedback about the Abby character. She's buff as hell, and people say she's this or that, a tranny, or I don't know. She's and what they did to. Do you know much about number 2, spoiler wise, or?
Yeah, I know the premise.
Okay, so some of the spoilers in it about Joel from the first game and what happens and stuff like that. I can see why so many people were furious about the decisions that they made. But in saying that, I found at the end of the game, when I finished it, I found Okay, I get it, and I would have liked things to be probably a different way. But in
Yeah.
saying that, that's kind of how life is, and especially in
Mm.
this kind of world they've established, it's full of disappointment, and
Yeah.
it's full of things that you don't want to happen. So it kind of feeds back into that loop, and that's what I kind of enjoyed about it, like because I kind of came to realization that they took so many risky directions with this game that haven't really been explored before in previous like sequels or tentpole
Yeah.
video
Sure.
games. I
Mm.
felt like it was very, very. I really liked that. I really enjoyed that aspect to it because I find
Yeah.
that game a lot of the time they play it safe and they always do what I think most things always do what the crowd wants them to do, or they kind of get a bit scared or cold feet about taking very. It's kind of like the Last Jedi effect with Star Wars or something like that, where they kind
Yeah.
of go against the grain in a lot of ways or expectations. And I understand why there's a lot of stink about stuff like that. And, you know, the core fan base always gets irritated or
Yeah.
furious about that kind of decision making. But
And you see that with anything. Like you look at movies, you look at anything really. Even if we go back to a film that just came out, the new Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
People create in their mind how they want it to be,
Yeah.
and then
yeah.
there's all these rumors that they want to be true, and all of this story, and so they hold on to all that baggage and all that expectation. When really what you need to do is when you boot up a game like this, or walk into the cinema, or load it up on
Wipe it.
That's right. Leave it there. Forget about it. Right, you're about to now go on an experience. You're going to experience a story or a moment or whatever you want to call it. You're now going. You really need to accept it for what it is and not what you want it to be. Because there's too many people in the world who want it their way, for everyone to have it their way. So, anyway.
Yeah, overall, I enjoyed Last of Us 2. I found it was a worthy sequel, and and yeah, I don't have much negative things to say about it, really. Like, it's a video game. I enjoyed playing it.
Yeah.
Everything about it's good. Pretty much. Like, obviously, there's faults in the game and nitpicking and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's worthy, and I look
Sure.
forward to seeing what they do next. And I look forward to the TV show, and I'm interested to see how they tackle that.
Yeah. If I press you a little bit further on the game before we move on.
Yeah, do.
So let's break this down, right? So the gameplay specifically, where did you sit with that?
I love the gameplay. I found I felt like that is built, because the first game's firmly established a very solid gameplay. The second one just built on top of that and went a step further with it, and it was gory.
Yeah.
It was great the way you could sneak around and all of it, all that gameplay aspects of it were top notch, like beautiful
Yeah.
graphics. It was stunning level design.
Yeah, sure.
And I love the way they kind of make you feel bad about killing the enemies or whatever, like because they humanize a lot of the characters, and there's a lot of side changing and like seeing different perspectives on both sides of kind of the what do you call it, whatever you want to call it. There's different perspective changes on, say, this faction to that faction, and because you're killing and murdering so many people, and usually in games it's like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, because you're that character,
absolutely.
so there's no real comeuppance, or there's no exploration into that psychology of actually having to kill so many people to get to your end goal. Like, no matter who you are, you kill X amount of people, it's going to take a toll on you. It's a very brutal thing to do. So PTSD, like all that kind of stuff, you get a lot of that sort of explored in the game a little bit. I'd love it to explore that further, and like they touch on it quite a bit, and I find like they were onto something with that concept, but I feel like they didn't quite pull it off like completely. but they were very close, and that decision making behind that was spot on. So I really like what they decided to do.
Yeah.
It's just that I felt like maybe they could have done with maybe another year in development, like most games. I felt like story wise and structure wise of the way the game flowed and stuff like that. I felt like there was bits in it that were a little bit patchy because maybe they were a little bit pressed for time, because it's such an ambitious kind of game or whatnot. So as always with most things, I think it could have done with a bit more time, but overall I think they did well. And yeah, anything else you want to ask?
No, well done. I think that's good. I'll have to get onto it.
Also, I bought the soundtrack. I'm holding up the vinyl to the camera right now.
Future me will be able to see you holding it up.
Future you, once you're editing the video, be able to see
that's
how
right.
beautiful this cover artwork is. And look, the soundtrack's really cool. I love the way they employ the composer. Gustavo Santaolalla. I don't even know how to say his name, pronounce it. Let's just call him Gustavo. But he's an awesome guitarist, and there's also additional music by Matt Quayle. So yeah, it's very hard hitting in a lot of ways, but very drony in a lot of other ways. I found it a lot more subdued than the first game soundtrack, but still did the job well and created a kind of that it encompassed the style and the world they'd built very nicely. And yeah, I find that with this kind of stuff, it's done so well. So I really look forward to how they tackle the TV show, because the TV show
that's going to be very interesting.
Is going to need to have that right. They need to get that stuff right. So anyway.
Well, I guess that'll bring us full circle in our conversation, between the idea of a movie blending from a game to then a game being sort of a narrative in its own right. But now we're going to be, going back to a screen-based, narrative, linear narrative sort of idea where it's going back to TV show, which is going to lend then from the game. And so it's going to be interesting to see
that trajectory.
That's right. To see where they land on that fine line.
Yeah, where they can connect the connections. What ones do they connect right? What points do they get right to the DNA? What survive? What comes out. Anyway, so that's going to be a HBO show. So we know it's going to be massive. A decent budget. It's going to have what it needs to be a successful show. It just comes down to how they pull it off ultimately with the story and the characters and stuff like that. But coming full circle to that, here's another segue for you. You haven't seen this, but I'm just going to talk about it briefly. It's a TV show on HBO, talking about HBO, so a good segue into Scenes from a Marriage. It's a miniseries, came out last year. At a good time for me because I was going through, once again, real life stuff here, going through my own separation, and this is all about that,
right?
To a point, and they've got, it's all about love, hatred, desire, monogamy, marriage, divorce through the lens of a contemporary American couple, played by Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. So you got two wonderful actors. And the way they just bounce off each other from episode to episode is just enthralling. I found it, I don't know if it's just because I was going through my own stuff in my private life. And they've got a child in it as well. So it's very hard hitting for me. And I was like, literally, I want to watch it again, because I found it so powerful in a lot of ways. It's at times it can be a little bit I felt like it's a bit over the top in some little aspects, but not in the way that it's silly or whatnot. But it just like I felt like it's a TV show, so it's like, it felt like real life, but also like an enhanced version of real life too. But not to say that it's not didn't feel like it could happen. It just felt like real life's different to this. It's just like because it's only I can't remember how many episodes it is, but I think it's only like 9 episodes or 8 episodes or something. So you're looking at such a big, might even be less than that. You're looking at such a large, in-depth character study.
Yeah.
That sort of. So it's 5 episodes. So it's quite short. So I felt like I wanted more, but at the same time I liked it how it was only snippets of what was going on, so there's a bit of time that passes in between each episode and whatnot. What else? I felt like it didn't end the way I kind of wanted it to, but in saying that, I found it to be good. I'd still rank it like an 8.5 out of 10, close to a 9.
Sure, very good.
But the acting in it is just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and I just wanted to sort of praise that because it's just so beautifully put together, and the way that they, I think I mentioned this to you, the way they'd start off each episode is almost behind the scenes, so they'd start off only for like 30, maybe a minute, or 30 seconds sometimes, or 20 seconds. Each episode was different. So they'd start off like the 2 actors walking on set, sitting down, getting into position. You'll see the lighting guy or the rigger or whatever. You see a bit of that going on just very briefly, and then the scene will begin. Or they've got the script or something like that, and they're sort of just running through a moment or something like that. Just real brief stuff. One episode's Jessica Chastain driving onto the set, getting out of the car, walking onto the set into the house. And then begin, and then they just like snap into it, and then it starts, and I love the way they did that. It's really cool. That
clever.
alone was very interesting. I found Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. I find those 2 actors really good, and this is perfect for them. Oscar Isaac's like one of my favorite kind of actors these days. Like everything he's done, I've always been interested. Just him in general.
Yeah.
I've always liked his style, and Jessica Chastain as well. I find her to be very good when she needs to be in the right films as well. And it's quality stuff.
Yeah. That brings on another point that I was thinking about today, where this, I guess, not specifically about any story, but the idea that, so we go back 10, 20 years, it was blasphemy to even mention getting an A-list actor on a TV show. They're in film. And you only go to do TV once your career has run its course or you're an up-and-comer. But now it feels like there's a massive change thanks to streaming, where anyone, doesn't matter how big an actor you are, you can jump between the two and there's no problem at all. So it's interesting how that's changed over time.
Oh, it's so crazy. Now it's almost like it's almost become better for actors A-list actors to have the TV shows on the side or in between their films or in amongst
absolutely.
it. Because
fill a spot,
Yeah. But talking about films,
well done.
let's segue into the next one, and possibly something that you have seen this time. So, A Quiet Place 2.
A Quiet Place 2. Here we go. All right.
Talking about... Yep, go. You take the reins on this.
All right, so now we're going to talk about Quiet Place 2. If you haven't watched the very first video on our YouTube channel, it is about a quiet place. I think it was called The Sound of a Quiet Place 2 or something like that. Anyway, it focuses on a quiet place. So if you haven't watched that video, it's about how the lack of sound made a film that was all about the sound. And then we go on to the second one, and I don't know if that rings as true as it did in the first one. I'm just going to open with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what are your thoughts of the film before I get too heavy in it?
I felt like it was just a bit of a, it wasn't nothing that much to be impacted by. Like I felt like it just kind of ran with it's just a straight up continuation of the first one, which it is. There's no improvements. There's no real. What can I say? I felt like there was no real pushing the boundaries with it in any way.
Yeah.
I found like it was just very tame and just continued the story and the style. I felt like it was more action based, or felt like it was less cutting edge in ways, if I could say that. I don't know. I felt like it just kind of did the bare minimum in a lot of ways. In saying that though, I did enjoy it. I didn't dislike it in any way. It was entertaining and stuff, but I felt like they could have pushed it way more.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Technically as well.
I felt the first opening scene that was kind of, that was set before the previous film. That was interesting. I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Maybe we're going to end up watching a prequel, because I hadn't looked too much into what this new one was about. So I watched that. Oh, is this a prequel? Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't expect that. There wasn't that focus on sound, but I was like, that's fine. We'll just keep going, see where it ends up. It was a cool scene all the same, sort of like an action scene going on, and we kind of get to know a little bit more about who the characters were before. They were these people who walked around this land and tried not to make a noise.
Yeah.
So we got to understand more of the backstory. And then, that ends. We have the title screen, jump back to pretty much straight where the other one left off. I felt like artistically they weren't. What you were saying, pushing the boundaries, is probably a good way of saying it. They were trying to focus more on the kind of action film, or the action aspect of it, and they didn't have that focus that the first one did on all of the stakes of what's going on around them. The characters didn't feel as scary. I did not see them as a threat at all. We'd already worked out in the first one that we can kill these buggers pretty easily.
That's exactly right, and that's where it really fell by the wayside for me, because once you take that threat out, what are you left with?
And that's right. So it's just like we're seeing these creatures that we're meant to be scared of again. Are we? Is that what we're doing? I thought we'd already worked this out. This could have been a really interesting way to focus on humanity, or people going.
That's what I thought. I thought it was going to lean into that way more heavily, especially at the start when you got like at the baseball field, or and you got the setup there, and then it kind of goes to the town, and then the attack happens, and all that kind of stuff. And I guess that was the prequel part, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I thought like they were going to go back to that like in a bigger way, where they're going to revisit the impact on civilization a lot more, and the creatures were going to be kind of secondary. Yeah,
and to be honest, like they could have gone two ways, right? They could have gone, let's stick to this as a prequel. Before we knew we could kill these guys really easily. Then with that, the stakes would have still been there, and we could have understand the full origin story of these creatures, right? Instead, they sort of showed us a little teaser, a little bit, and then we threw it back into, okay, now they're not so scary. To be honest, I checked out of the second act, and only sort of came back in the third act, when we actually had a goal, because I felt like we were goalless through the second act.
Yeah.
We were just roaming around, and there wasn't really too much to it, which is fine. But if there's too much wandering around aimlessly, I check out, and then personally, and that's what I did with that second act bit. We had some other characters, and they sort of played with the idea of these characters. Can we trust them? Can we not? Who are they? You know, all that kind of idea. The sort of tropes we're seeing in all of the zombie films and all of these other films that exist, post-apocalyptic films. It started going into the stereotypical tropes there, and I was like, you know, you could have done something different, but that's fine. You've done that. But they had to go all in. I felt like they had to go all in on one thing. You know, how about we change it up and make the humans the enemy?
Yeah.
And really play on that?
Yeah.
Or they just had to pick a direction and really stick with it, because I felt like there wasn't for a big chunk of the film.
And then obviously you get the ending.
Yeah.
Where they're like, all right, we need to do the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they're going to lean into that more with the next film, because I feel like the whole alien threat thing's not a threat.
Well, as soon as you've figured out a way of killing them in the first film, you know, they're no longer a threat. You have to figure out another threat, another thing for us as an audience to root for or fear for, or, you know, at least keep us questioning what's going on. And I think that was missing. And then going back to what I was saying at the beginning, there wasn't that same focus on we have to be super quiet. They'd throw it in a scene here or there.
Yeah.
But there wasn't that, like the first one, that was nail biting, because every little noise we heard, you know, was, and it goes back to that idea about the horror films that are really scary is the shit we make up in our own mind. And they were using sound as that mechanism for us to feel that. And I just feel like that was missing in this second one.
Yeah, yeah. They kind of just went, we're just going to do a B-grade movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, as a film on its own, it's fine. There was parts I liked. There was parts I really liked.
Yeah.
You know, even though I did lose me in that second act, it did.
Yes.
It did bring me back in at the end there. As soon as we had a goal, so fine, we got a goal. All right, now I've got something we can root for. I really liked the beginning. So parts of it were really good, but I still prefer the first one for sure.
And I really like Emily Blunt.
She's amazing.
I can always watch her.
Yeah.
She's cool. And obviously I like Cillian Murphy, who they brought into it. He's the guy in like the bunker, hiding out. He's a great actor. And John Krasinski as well. You know, got to give him props too. And they're a couple, him and Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
So it's a husband and wife thing. So.
I just wish he was in it more. And obviously he got killed off, so they couldn't. But again, if it was a prequel, there's no worries. Throw him back in. There's no issue there at all.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it is what it is.
In some ways, it felt a bit Last of Us-y, you know, the whole survival thing again.
Yeah.
So kind of, you know, had beats to that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I feel like imagine if these were just more brutal, you know, and I thought they were going to probably build on the whole alien thing, you know. I thought there was going to be more to them, maybe a different breed of alien, or they've evolved, or you know, that when they up the stakes on them a bit,
and,
like,
or even these guys adjust the troops they send down.
Exactly,
and the real guys come.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like these were just the you know, the pawns.
Yeah.
I really thought that was going to be
build more of a mythology around.
I was like waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, our old tricks don't work anymore, and really give something for us to be like, oh shit. And bring back those horror elements that the first one was so well known for. Yeah.
Anyway, it's still enjoable, worth a watch.
Yeah,
it's you know.
I am hating on a lot of things at the moment, but again, as I said, there were bits I enjoyed.
That's good.
You know, you might really love it. You might not tune out in the second act like I did. So give it a watch anyway.
Yeah. What would you give it out of 10?
Okay, I'd probably say this one. I'd say the first is probably an 8 or a 9. This one's probably more. This one's probably more of a 6.
Okay.
So it's not a 3.
Yeah. I'd give it like I'd give this one probably like it feels like around about a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like 5.5 to 6.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get brutal on scoring these days.
Yeah, I
saying
think
how it is.
You have to be a bit more harsh on.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen enough
systems
these days, so yeah, I'm going to get more harsher now.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it didn't really give me anything apart from a film to watch that wasn't shit.
That's it. Yeah.
So apart from that, 5.5 to a 6. And then the first one I'd probably give even like a 7.5.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Maybe a 7, because I liked it, but it didn't like wow me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I guess the artist in me is drawn to that point that I mentioned at the beginning.
You're very technical. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
And I mean, that's the aspects I loved about the film. That's the whole hook with the whole idea of the film, which they did marvelously. But I just, I don't know. I felt like I'd seen stuff like that before. Or
fair enough. Very good.
Anyway, I still love it. It.
Anyway, I guess we'll leave it there. So thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell. If you're listening to us on any of our podcast channels, our Spotify's or our Apple Podcasts, make sure you jump onto our YouTube where you can see our wonderful, beautiful, attractive faces. If I talked up our faces, then sorry. Apologies.
Indeed.
Anyway, so I guess we'll leave it there. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.
I'll see you later. Adios.
Thanks for watching Mini Academy Online. If you'd like to explore more about content, click on this or click on that. Like and subscribe, thumbs up, ring bells, do a dance, sing a song, drink a hot cup of tea or coffee, and I'll see you in the next one.